What's up, everybody? We are back for another edition of Champaign Room Hoops podcast. It's part of Beyond the Big Ten Podcast Network. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube at Beyond Big Ten. Also, make sure to follow along on all social media, Twitter, IG, and TikTok with the handle Beyond Big Ten. I am former Illini point guard Sam Maniscalco, joined by do-it-all swingman, the original OG, Mr. 3&D, Billy Cole at BuckWildBill33. Thanks for tuning in once again. Billy, what's good? How was Christmas, brother?
Oh, man, everything's good right now. Christmas was great. Family time, work slowed down a little bit. Just happy to, sit back after a Missouri win, watch some Illini hoops, and now get to talk about it with you. So it's all been good. How about you?
Good, man. Busy with work, as you know, running around like crazy. Looking forward to this conference season for Illinois. Really, really get to hone in, as we've both been through that before, and talk some more Illini hoops. Just want to mention our other podcast partner, Brandon Paul, who has been on this year, wasn't able to make it today. So Merry Christmas, Brandon. Happy New Year. We miss you, and we will be sure to have Brandon back on sometime over the next few episodes. We miss him. So let's dive right in, right? Last we talked, we were previewing the bragging rights game. We talked about what a great atmosphere that place is. I think all three of us were on at the time. We mentioned that, being one of the coolest atmospheres and one of our favorite games to play in every year in St. Louis. And it wasn't much of a game.
No, total domination from the Illini to start. I thought, top 10 team, basically 10 or 11th in the country, depending on which poll you look at. We came out. We didn't play around. Usually that's a game where the lesser team kind of finds their feet. They get the crowd into it, and they make a tight game out of it. We didn't let that happen. We looked old, like we are. We've talked about that a lot. I thought that was a really mature performance in a tough, rivalry game, bragging rights game, whatever you want to call it. And then I thought the role players were excellent. Quincy Guerrier, 5 threes, I believe. He's been bringing it the last couple of games, so that's great to see. Then just a defensive lockdown. Just seems like Missouri, I know they're a little down this year, but hanging our hat on the defense all year long, and then when it matters most in a rivalry game, just bottom line, it's a big win to set us up for a tough January, which is all Big Ten slate, 10 different Big Ten teams coming at us in the month of January.
Yeah, and we scored 97 points. That's a lot of points. So offense is obviously free flowing, looked good. So now we transition. So, I want to just touch on in that Missouri game, our best player all year has been Terrence Shannon Jr. Scored 30, 9 for 14 from the field, 30 and 11, had a double-double. Like you said, Quincy Guerrier, averaging 22 in his last 3 games. What a pickup he was. But before we move on, as we talk about, getting into the conference slate, there was obviously some breaking news over the last 48 hours, which I'm sure most Illini fans know by now. But Terrence Shannon Jr. has been suspended indefinitely by the university. He's gotten into some legal trouble. We'll let due process play out. We won't speculate on that. But we can talk about what that does now, because it changes things, right? So I think Illini are 11th in the country, the highest we've been all year, just rolling 10-2. Well, 9-2 tonight will be, they're 26.5 point favorites for Fairleigh Dickinson. So let's assume they win the night. 10-2, great non-conference slate, right? Heading into, the start of the Big Ten season. So it's a little different. So 11th, I will say we're not the 11th ranked team in the country without Terrence Shannon Jr. on her team. So what's our mindset now? What do we do? What's Underwood's message? How do we get past this?
Yeah, for sure. It was there's, like you said, we're not going to speculate on any of the legal stuff. It's way too early for any of that. But I think that, the bottom line is this type of charge, it doesn't play itself out in a matter of a month or 2 months. This is going to be, unfortunately for everyone involved, this is going to be a long time thing, probably resolve itself in the summer or even later. So as Illini fans, it's a dark day. you had probably what was the best team since the 2005 national championship runner-up squad. Maybe there's an argument for the Io and Kofi team. It would have been a good game versus this team, but for the most part, Illini Nation was totally dead set on a big time finish to this season and a big time finish in March. So it's sad, right? Because my immediate thought process is a little bit of the head and heart analogy. My head goes to exactly what you just said. The outlook on the season, all the predictions we've made. When you have a guy that is 30% of your usage rate on offense, in averaging what he averages and guarding the other team's best player, it's we're not the same team. Unfortunately, it's going to be really tough to have the same type of finish that everyone was expecting and hoping for and praying for if you're a big time Illini fan. But I think the other part of it is the heart side of it, right? For everyone like me that grew up an Illini fan, had a bunch of hope this season, that hope's not gone. We still have a really talented roster. Me and you have gone back many times on this podcast and talked about what a good recruiter Brad is. So he's got a really deep roster, and it'll be interesting to see if the fans can all get behind the team. Those kids are going to have to suit up tonight against Farley Dickinson and Northwestern next week. They didn't do anything wrong with this situation, so it's got to be just as devastating as it is for all the fans. It's going to be 10 times devastating for those players, not to lose their leader. So how do they respond, right? I mean, that's the question at hand that me and you have to answer. I think honestly, it's going to be tough. It wouldn't shock me if they're a little out of sorts tonight. But I think we've got some pieces that are going to be thrust into the forefront, right? You've got Coleman Hawkins is now going to have to go from being Robin to being Batman, in my
Totally.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Dane Danger, who's kind of a funny talking point on this podcast because he has spurts where he dominates, but he can't seem to find the floor ever. I think that's going to change. Maybe shift Coleman to the 4 for a majority of the game, and then you've got Dre Lawhorn, who hasn't really been able to see the floor much, just because he's a freshman and he's trying to get used to everything. And he had Terrence Shannon ahead of him at the off guard spot all year. Well, now all of a sudden, hey freshman, welcome to the big time. You're gonna have to go score points and guard somebody tonight. So I'm interested to see how it all plays out. It's a really unfortunate storyline, but that's why sports are great. I think we've all seen the totally unexpected happen in sports before, and I'm kind of praying that it goes this direction again.
Yes, it's going to have to be done by committee, right? I mean, first of all, you're not going to replace his production, and his output, and like you said, his usage rate and everything, and what he means to this team. Where they're currently at in this season. So it's going to have to be done by committee. And you mentioned some good names there. It provides opportunity, right? One thing this does. If you're looking at it from a pure basketball perspective and in Brad Underwood's mind and stuff, it's like, all right, here, next man up mentality, right? You hear that all the time in sports, whatever level it is. And it's interesting too, because when I was at Bradley, my freshman year, we had an All-American point guard, Daniel Ruffin, that went down with a sports hernia injury just after the end of the non-conference slate. And I was a freshman and I was playing 20, 25 minutes a game, getting some good experience. But overnight, I was thrust into the starting point guard role, and it was an opportunity for me. And I find it hard to believe that whole process that I went through for those 10 or 15 games without Daniel and getting thrust into that didn't play a role in the reason that I became the player I became and how quickly I matured. And it was just invaluable experience. And I'm certainly not comparing this situation to that directly, but it is an opportunity for some other guys to get thrust and thrown into the fire in a sense. And sometimes that's the best way you learn, right? Again, nobody's going to go out there. It'd be great, but I'm not expecting anybody to go out there and put up 22 a game and carry, Terrence Shannon Jr.'s load. But it's one of those situations too, like you mentioned. Does a locker room get broken because of this? If they come out a little flat tonight, that could be expected. Or do they rally around this type of situation? And I think Brad Underwood's the kind of coach where he can get a team to rally around it. And by rally around it, I mean they don't quit, right? I'm not expecting them to, but their demeanor, their body language, none of that changes. It's the next man up mentality, and they continue playing the style of basketball they've been playing. Now, from a X's and O's standpoint, obviously some things are going to have to change. You mentioned it. Coleman Hawkins is going to have to be Batman, right? And he's going to have to probably a little bit out of his comfort zone, so to speak, force the issue, right? And he's going to take some bad shots. He's going to do some things that you probably aren't used to seeing, but he's going to have to do that because they have to figure out a way to, you know, get this production from other guys. And here's the biggest thing: forget the points. I thought Terrence Shannon this year was having an excellent year defensively and as a leader. He was really kind of the engine defensively that got them going, got their defense creating offense. So it's an opportunity on that end as well for guys to step up. So it's going to be interesting. We don't have a magic ball here that can predict what happened, but I think tonight's a good start to see the route Brad Underwood would go. And then what better opportunity do you have than first game? Well, technically not the first game. Rutgers was before the end of the non-conference slate, but we got Northwestern, in-state rival, coming into Champaign on Tuesday. What better way to get your younger guys in a situation like this to rally around and get your feet wet than Northwestern coming in your home building?
Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely huge game. We've played some great battles against Northwestern ever since Chris Collins has been there. It's been almost a changed program where it's not so much you're looking at a team as, oh, let's go in here and get this win and get out of here. It's you're up for a dogfight every time. And I think, honestly, if I look at the Terrence Shannon situation, where we're going to really miss him is the close Big Ten battles. And I think
Yep.
that may seem so obvious, but
Closer.
it's the transition. It's not just the closer for me. It's the transition 6 to 8 to 10 points a game that he just steals. They're completely unguarded possessions. He just goes out and basically gets every start of the game that he starts. You could just basically go out and put 6 or 8 or 10 free points on the board. And I think those are the type of games that takes a hard fought win for Illinois and turns them into a toss up. And then it becomes what you just said, right? Then it becomes who can close a game when it's a 1 point, a 2 point spread coming down with 30 seconds left. Is Coleman going to take that over? Are the shot selections going to look the same? Is it going to be natural? And I want to go back to something you said because it really struck a chord with me. I think the mental makeup of this team is going to be defined sometime in the next 2 to 3 games, meaning that they're going to have an opportunity where stuff looks really ugly at some point. And what's that first reaction like? Are they all coming together? Are they staying in their foxhole, metaphorically speaking, or all of a sudden does the finger pointing come out? And does the frustration from being thrust into a whole situation that none of these kids asked for, that
Yeah.
they're still playing? I think that if there's one thing to watch, it will be the first, make or break moment. And we'll see it. I don't think it'll necessarily be tonight in Farley Dickinson. I just think, whether Terrence Shannon plays or doesn't play, we're going to roll that team over, hopefully. And hopefully that's not a viral soundbite after we lose. But I do think these first couple Big Ten games. I mean, just pull up the calendar if you're an Illini fan and look at our
Yeah,
January
the
Big
first
Ten
four are
schedule.
insane. I mean, you can go all the way down the line, but
Yeah,
Northwestern, at Purdue, Michigan State at home. It's right off the bat.
it's crazy. I think we play 10 different Big Ten teams in January. It's absolutely nuts. Murderer's row that we have to go through. And that's every year. But it's just going to have to be a really quick transition, not to beat a dead horse, but it's not a good time of the season to be figuring out brand new roles.
Yep.
So it's all going to come down to, like I just said, and you touched on it earlier, it's going to come down to toughness and mentality. And then once they wrap their arms around the acceptance of the situation and staying together, then their talent can start to weave itself in there and maybe steal a few games. But I mean, bottom line, the I'm thinking I think it's going to be really hard to compete with Purdue for the Big Ten title. Where I was first couple episodes, I was really, I was like, hey, I think we're probably finished second, but I think we give them a good run. I think right now, just getting into the tournament with a good seed at this point. So we're talking third, fourth, or fifth in the Big Ten. I think that really would be a good spot to be in come March.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast expectations change and how much he means to the team. And like you said, it's probably as a group for this Illini team, it's hands down the biggest, piece of adversity they're going to face, like you mentioned. So it's a make or break moment for sure. Do you think Brad? Do you think he? Do you think they changed their style, sort of sense? Like, do you think he's? I mean, I've been on teams before in situations where a couple of our best players may have been out for injury or something, and we changed, like, a coach would run more sets to try to control the game from that coaching perspective every single possession and make it more of a possession game. Do you think he does something like that based on, losing Terrence Shannon Jr., or do you think he just says, hey, next man up, go out and play. We're going to continue to play the way that we always play, or is it a game to game basis? What do you think about that?
I absolutely think he will try and micromanage the
Yeah,
sets more, and he'll probably do it in a way that's a little more subliminal to the players, meaning what used to be, hey, a loose set, I would call it, where you have dribble handoffs into some motion, into a matchup that you like. It will probably be more set play calls. And part of why I think he'll do that is to protect the transition that I just talked
totally.
about for roles, right? So, to the layman who's not super familiar with, everything we just said, during this transition period, the coach can protect the player a little bit because a new player, take Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, who we talked about earlier, who's going to have to take a scoring role on. His head will be spinning a million miles an hour when they get on the offensive end. And it's a lot of useless thoughts like, okay, am I spaced correctly? Am I in the right spot? Is this a good shot to shoot? When your coach can take that off of you and just call a set every time down. So you immediately know, here's where I'm supposed to be, here's the order of operations on the play, and here's what a good shot within this set looks like. I think Brad will probably have to micromanage them out of this on offense a little bit. And hopefully the defense can lead to some transition opportunities too, because that also alleviates your offensive workflow as well.
Totally. Those are excellent points there. And I agree. I mean, I don't know if he's going to walk the ball up necessarily and completely. I mean, he's going to want to, like you said, micromanage is a great word to use in this situation. He's going to want to micromanage the tempo as best as he can. But you and I both know that the only way you can really do that is having a heady point guard that has been there before, a very, very, very experienced guard that is able to do that, which would be, Terrence Shannon Jr. So, it's going to be interesting. I don't think much changes for him defensively, but I do think that one other thing to point out, we mentioned Coleman Hawkins as far as he's really got to step up with his production and be, quote unquote, a Batman, like you said. He's an emotional player. He's shown that the last few years in a good way. I think when he channels that emotion, to his advantage, it could be really useful. I do think that sometimes he, gets so emotional that it affects his play and it affects the team. How emotional is he going to be over this? How is emotional? Because I feel like a guy like that, that's at the forefront of our team and our brand of basketball the last few years, is really going to set the tone for the rest of the guys, right? I love Terrence
Yeah.
Shannon's demeanor because he's not very emotional. He kind of just plays. He plays hard. And he leads by example. And the team a lot of time follows his lead with their body language and their demeanor throughout the course of a game. That's gone. Coleman's a little bit more of a wild card as far as that goes. Do you think the team? It's a sensitive situation because I don't want them to follow necessarily his body language in a sense. You know what I'm saying? But I do. You understand what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say? Yeah. I mean,
totally.
that's going to
I
be a
think
big deal.
Absolutely. I look at it like this, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, the coach on the floor essentially just got fired.
Yeah.
And you've got a new coach coming in, right? And that coach most likely, it's not always just because it's your best player. Like, for instance, I don't think our best player when I was there was always the most vocal. In fact, he would probably admit he wasn't.
I think I know who you're
But
talking
I do
about.
yeah, and I think in this scenario it probably is because I feel like last year when Meyer and Shannon and Hawkins, I do feel like Hawkins kind of stuck his hand in there and said I'm the leader, and then sometimes it works out where you find out, oh, actually Terrence Shannon Jr. is the leader.
Right.
um, and so I don't know. I think that's a good thing to watch. I don't know where I stand on that. I think you're right. It maybe makes me a little more nervous than I'm willing to admit, just because of the emotionalism that you talked about that he plays with. Sometimes I wish he would be more instinctual and not so much of a waiting for a shot to go in or a pass to open up a dunk or a block on defense to get his game going. And I think that would be maybe the counterpoint to everything I said earlier of Brad micromanaging the game. Is the exact opposite of that is also possible, where he looks at these guys in the huddle, he pulls them in close before this game, everything that they're going through, all the emotions that they're feeling, and he says, forget everything. Play as hard as you've ever played, be as athletic as you've ever been, and we're gonna try and win games like that. And just take the thought process out of the game.
Yeah,
And you might play faster, you might see shots go in. But yeah, I think maybe the last point with this transition I'm interested to hear your thought point process in is, I think that the shot making has to be at an all-time high level now. You've lost
yeah,
that margin of error.
for
You've
sure.
got Luke Goody's going to have to go from the 2 to 3 a game to the 4 to 5 a game.
Yep.
Quincy Guerrier, he's been so hot lately. That can't be an aberration. That comes back down to earth. And we're going to have to find, Coleman Hawkins, his normal 1 or 2 a games needs to go up as well. But I think anytime you lose that athletic guard, the thing that can kind of keep you whole on offense is to see shots go through the
Go
net.
in. Yeah. And, to that point you just said, he was so good at manufacturing points from the free throw line too, because of how physical he was. I mean, that was one of the best parts of his game. He was averaging here. Let's look. He's averaging almost 8 free throws a game. That's really, really,
Yeah,
really good.
it's
He's
crazy.
manufacturing literally 6 points a game just from the free throw line. So there's going to be some voids to fill. I like your comment about Luke Goody. I mean, he's shooting 44% from three, shooting 5 a game. Like you said, that's going to have to go up. Like what you just said about Brad Underwood having a conversation with the team about, just play basketball. They're going to have a conversation with him and say, listen, no shot's a bad shot. I want you to shoot 10, 12 threes a game. Don't worry I don't care if 0 go in. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he's going to have to kind of get that mentality with these guys and try to make them free flowing and not that whole, like you said early on, where it's like, oh, am I going to make a mistake here? Is this a good shot? Is this a bad shot? Take the thinking out. Like you mentioned, it's crazy because I feel like for the better part of the last, I mean, we talked all season last year, and then the early episodes we talked about this season were a lot of the talk was about role defining, right? And I feel like we were finally at a point where we're like, and we've talked about this off air too, like it's the first time we've seen roles really, really defined and they're gelling and they're playing well. And Brad Underwood finally has a team built exactly how he wants it. There's a pecking order and everything. And then this happens. So it's almost like you're starting from scratch in that regard. But I'm actually take a glass half full approach. I'm interested and equally as excited to see what growth could possibly come from this. As far as the other guys go, I'm excited to see what kind of step Coleman Hawkins takes. Right, we know he's averaging 9 points a game. We know he's a kind of a point forward type, and he does so much more than what the stat sheet says on a game by game basis. But I want to see him as a primary scoring option. You mentioned Dane Danger, who we were high on last year and really hasn't gotten the quote unquote opportunities this year that that he had last year. He's averaging 12 minutes a game coming in tonight. His minutes are going to go way up. His opportunities are going to go way up. Luke Goody, who we just talked about, Ty Rodgers, right? Ty Rodgers has really solidified a really nice role for himself as far as being that, 3D knockoff 3D guy because he doesn't really shoot threes, but our best defender, super athletic, gets to the glass, but doesn't really look at the basket, right? Besides stuff around the rim. So let's see what opportunities he gets now. It presents a lot of different. My head's spinning right now talking about it. So
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine, like we talked about earlier, what they are going through as a team, as a staff, etc. But I do know when these type of situations can arise in sports, it could be a rallying cry, right? The positive about this is that, listen, you're on a team of brothers that you have been in a locker room with, that you signed up to play for with. Sports is a distraction, right? It's a way for them to go out and get things off their mind. And um, so it's in a nutshell, it's going to be interesting. But back to our original point, we're not the 11th ranked team in the country right now, which is unfortunate.
No, I was just thinking about this analogy and I kind of like it. But, with all of the college basketball talking heads and all of the who's who in college basketball putting us as a Final Four team in the last couple of weeks, for this to happen, it would be like painting a masterpiece on a blank canvas, being halfway done with it, knowing how good it was, and then someone coming over, kicking it out of the way, giving you a new thing, and taking away your best paintbrush.
Yeah.
And we still have the ability to paint a masterpiece, right? Like you said, it's all out in the open before this team to either come together and make a great finish to the season and a great story out of it, or we can struggle without our best paintbrush. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a ton of unknown. It's honestly tough to even wrap our minds around the news of the last 24, 48 hours. I know a lot of it. I've been scrolling through Twitter. I think Illini Nation's just kind of dumbfounded. Everyone feels a little numb to the news, but hopefully the team, like you said, basketball will become a distraction away from the news cycle for a little bit, and hopefully they paint their own ending to the season, and it shocks the world a little bit because, like you said, like I said, like you said, we're not the 11th best team in the country anymore. But who knows? We could be the 25th best team in the country that wins a couple games in the tournament, right? I don't think that's me just saying that because I run an Illinois basketball podcast. I think that's truthful. We have the talent on the team to do something like that. So let's see where it goes.
Do you think we win one of the next three?
Hold on a second. I got to pull up that.
So Northwestern. I'm sorry. I'm taking. Let me rewind there. Take Fairleigh Dickinson tonight out. Let's talk about the first three in the Big Ten. So at Purdue, we're not winning that one without Terrence Shannon. I mean, anything could happen, right? But Michigan State at home. But I think the best one, rivalry. I think one good thing about rivalry games is it takes all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty much a neutral playing field in a sense. I'm missing the words here, but a rivalry game, you could throw all stats, all that stuff out the door, right? Who's not playing, who's playing, it so to speak. So I think our best one to get would be Tuesday, Northwestern at home.
Yeah, I agree. I think 3-0 would absolutely blow my mind. 2-1 would be amazing. 1-2 is probably the most likely for me, and then 0-3 is, oh no, this is the disaster we all prayed didn't happen after this news cycle happened. So that would probably be my best guess. I just think those teams are. I mean, Purdue might be the best team in the country, especially in regular season play for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've got our thoughts on that. Northwestern, they're Illinois' little brother syndrome. So, like you said, they're going to play as hard as a team can physically play against us. So we'll be ready. I think that's the thing, though, is the toughness mentality part has always been Brad's biggest strength as a coach. We've never had to get on a pod and question like they just looked flat all game or they didn't try. They had hustle mistakes, stuff that can't happen. We've never had to do that. So I think with their talent, yeah, I think one or two games out of those three, I think it's okay. I think you've kind of stabilized the ship after the torpedo went off, and you can start to make plans for how you finish January strong.
I don't know the exact rules anymore because college basketball is so crazy now with the transfer portal. But is that something could somebody transfer now into the program?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a certain date that you have to be on the roster by. I want to say it's sometime in November.
Okay. So it's not like there's people that have entered the transfer portal beginning of the year at another school and they're still sitting there and like you can go grab them. Like it's not like free agency.
I'm honestly, now that you say that, like you said, the rules have changed so much since I played. But I do think I think there's like a drop dead date at some point in the fall.
That would be interesting because I could see that if that's possible, I could see that happening too, where he throws in there like a free agency type thing and tries to pick somebody up
That would
to
be
pick up the
amazing.
slack. So, yeah, just wild stuff. So, we're gonna regroup, is what we'll do. Hopefully, we have Brandon on next time too, because it's unfortunate he wasn't able to join this time because I would love to get his thoughts on all this stuff going on and what in line I have ahead of them. But so let's see, three in a row. So Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State. I say we regroup and let these next 4 games play out. I'm going to be interested in watching tonight. I wanted to see just their demeanor, right? I'm not expecting to see anything specifically tonight, but just, the demeanor of the team and how they come out versus Fairleigh Dickinson. Hopefully, they get that W. They should. And then these next 3 Big Ten games, let's see what we're made of, right? And Brad is, like you said, is preaching that toughness, and that's kind of what he's been all about since he's been at Illinois. So crazy stuff. I feel like it's just, last year we had a couple episodes early in the season, with the transfer news and stuff like that, with guys leaving the team, and then this offseason, the boatload of guys that left, and we were like, holy smokes, like, is this program ever really going to get, its feet back on the ground again from, talking about the Kofi Io years. And we were rolling this year, then this happened. So Brad is certainly well-versed in and has experience in the adversities and the ups and downs of a college basketball season. So let's see what kind of rabbit he can pull out of his hat this time. But we'll regroup in a few weeks. Hopefully, Line I go 4-0. We're back on here with balloons and kazoos, and we're like, holy cow, this team's amazing. And there's a new star on the team. And Coleman Hawkins becomes the top 5 pick in the NBA draft because of this next 4-game slate. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. But still, exciting to watch. I'm sure they're going to play hard. And we'll regroup in a few weeks and see where we're at there. Sound good?
That sounds perfect. I agree with everything you said. If that happens, I'll kiss your ass.
Okay. All right. And we'll end on that note. Thanks, Illini fans, for joining. We'll see you in a few weeks. Champaign Room Hoops Podcast.
See you guys.